Hello everybody, it's Joanne Fedler here, and this is Ask Me Anything, your writing questions answered. Today's question has come from a writer who wants to know, how do I know if I have found my writing voice? I guess that's the kind of question that we all want to know the answer to. And my answer to that is that if you are asking, have I found my writing voice? You're probably not quite there yet. But please don't let that put you off or discourage you in any way. You know, the way I think of finding our writing voice is that we circle and circle and circle around an idea. We might be circling around a topic and we write about it. Like, have you watched the way a cat will circle itself and circle itself until it kind of finds the right spot, the exact perfect, most comfortable spot that it wants to settle in? A lot of writing for me feels like that. We're circling around an idea. We may be even circling around a particular paragraph until we get that perfect configuration. And when it happens, it feels to me sometimes almost as if it is a kind of a chemical reaction, because something happens in that moment. You write the sentence, and often for me, actually, it's more than a sentence. It's probably a couple of sentences, even a whole paragraph. And I know that that is exactly the voice of what I'm trying to say. And your writing voice as a writer is obviously going to depend on your particular sensibility, your experiences, your set of beliefs and values, your emotions, your memories, and the meaning that you've made from all of those experiences. It's going to come out in your writing voice. But every single book that you write, and probably every single piece that you write, smaller piece, is also going to have its own voice, because you might be writing, as a young teenage girl in one particular piece, but you might be writing as a mother and a social worker or an activist in a book, or as some other person in an article based on some other experiences of yours. So every single piece is going to also have its own voice, which is that piece's own kind of particular sensibility. So I want to encourage you to look at other writers who seem to kind of have it. And there must be writers that you really love, because when you read them, you really get a sense of their particular voice. You get a sense of who they are as people. They also have, sometimes it's called a particular style. And sometimes when we read somebody else's style like that, one that particularly that we admire, I'm not suggesting that you go and copy that, but sometimes in the presence of such a clear voice, and I would suggest that you take that writing and you read it out aloud, there's almost a way in which, in the presence of something that is so clear and so itself, it's almost like we're able to then define ourselves in relation to it and think, well, then what is my particular voice? How would I talk? How would I express myself? And you might then find your own idiom, or the way in which you write your own sentences will come out almost like as if you've been kind of given permission to find that voice. I've often found that that really does help me. And depending on what I'm writing, I will then often go and read different types of books. I might read poetry if I'm really trying to find a lyrical voice, or something that's deeply philosophical or profound, or if I'm looking for writing, I'm trying to write something that is really dense and in which I can take language and try and convey something in very few words, then I will go and read particular kind of poetry. But if I'm looking to write a different kind of piece, I might go and read someone like Helen Garner if I'm looking for a different voice. And in reading her, it's almost like I'm then able to borrow that certainty, to feel into that certainty. When I get a sense of somebody else who is certain, I can then maybe take some of that certainty away and find the sentences that are going to help me to then create the benchmark of everything else. So even if you haven't found your writing voice for a long piece, keep going at it. And at a certain point, you will want to spend time doing that circling and that circling and that circling until you really do get that chemical reaction, that absolute certainty. Yes, that's the voice. Because I promise you, when it happens, it's not a question you have to ask anybody else. You don't need to check in with anybody else if you found your voice when you find it. And it is such a beautiful, magical moment when it happens so you will know it. You won't need your inner knowing, your truth will absolutely ring in that moment. And then everything else that you write will have to be filtered through the prism of that particular voice, because you'll want that voice then to define everything else that follows. You want that to be the benchmark. So it's fantastic when that happens, because every time you write, then you go back to that first sentence or that first paragraph and you make sure. I always think of it almost like a, like the threads must all pull through. It's all got to have that same sound. So I wish you all the best in looking for your writing voice. And if you do have a question for us, please email me, admin@joannefedler.com, and I will make sure that I answer your question.